Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Heather Hollander. Heather is a love ambassador and radiant health missionary. Her work as a creative producer has been focused on film and social media content to inspire people to believe in a better world and live their best life. She is co-producer of the Portal Film Experience, a cinematic documentary that explores what it means to be human and how our greatest challenges serve as gateways to our purpose. Heather has dedicated the past 20 years to learning how we truly heal and how we can align with the truth of who we are. She is trained as a yoga and meditation teacher, energy healer, and somatic therapist. Her fierce dedication to her personal healing has led her to explore various trauma theory modalities, healing spiritual traditions, including Tantra, biohacking, integrative medicine, and intuitive energy medicine. She founded and directed Bodacious Living Yoga Studio and Boutique, which served as community home for spiritual inquiry and exploration in Carlsbad. When she closed the studio, her focus shifted to living and inspiring a bodacious life through her media, content, and somatic healing offerings. Welcome to the podcast, Heather.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yes, so let's start by you telling us a little bit about you, where you grew up. I know you've done some different things in your life and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I was born in Laguna Beach, California. I'm a California girl. I've lived quite a bit both in Southern California and Northern California. I went to high school in Dana Point at Dana Hills. I just love the ocean. I've always been a beach girl. I also love the mountains. I've always been a Tahoe girl. And as a Gemini, it kind of serves me well to feel like both places are home. I went to Chico State University and I majored in psychology and human resources. And I was a Sigma Kappa. So I was a sorority girl there, which, was an absolute joy. And I created lifetime friendships and just women who are soul sisters that carry forward to today. I started my career in corporate sales. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs and salespeople. And so it was really natural for me to go into a sales position. Plus, I really like my freedom. So I loved being out on the road and getting, working in territories and getting to know people and really being a connector. And then when I was in my early 20s, I got married to an incredible man named Kevin. And we had an absolute fairy tale love affair. We had known each other in high school. And then we ended up getting married in our early 20s. And about a year and a half after we got married, our lives suddenly changed. We were really on a trajectory of everything we touched turned to gold, and it was quite a ride. I had a very interesting childhood with quite a bit of emotional trauma and crisis in it. Wonderful, beautiful, brilliant souls in my family, and we all went through a lot together. So I sort of had created this perfect life. I have a lot of this sort of survivor archetype in me, sort of the superwoman archetype, like nothing will get me down, I'll just shine brighter and rise above. So I was playing that out and it was really working really well. And I had this beautiful man and we had this beautiful life. We had this dream wedding and we had these dream jobs, and then we were buying homes, and then boom, 27 years old, I got hit with meningitis and encephalitis and landed in the hospital in the ICU for a couple of weeks. And my life was never the same after that. And I guess how could it be the same after you've spent a couple of weeks with your brain and your nervous system completely on fire? My perception, my experience of life changed deeply. And I spent about 3 years mostly in bed. I was told by the doctors when they let me leave the hospital with my pile of medications that, really I should think about getting a job at a flower shop part-time. They wanted to prepare me for the fact that they said I would be disabled the rest of my life and living on pain meds, and that I would never really be able to manage any sort of stress again. Of course, at 27 years old, being the wild soul that I was like, I don't think so.
Mhm.
Like, that's not acceptable to me. I remember Kevin and everyone in my life trying to get me to just relax and heal and just let things go and to just hand over all my responsibilities. And at the time, that's what I had to do because I was sleeping like 19 plus hours a day for the first year and a half. I was literally walking dead, but I wasn't doing much walking. If you saw me during that time or knew me during that time, you knew that, I was literally taking medications like Ritalin in order to be able to go to the grocery store. And so at 27 years old, having, just been climbing this golden dream of a life that we were building, it was a really, really hard crashing fall. My husband was amazing and he stood by me the entire time. While I was sleeping 19 plus hours a day, all the trauma from my childhood started resurfacing. So everything that I had pushed aside and decided didn't matter and wouldn't get me down started coming back to me in body memories and sensory memories in my dreams. And I would wake up and be extremely upset. So we went through quite a bit in those first 3 years, including several emergency room visits and relapses. And then we had about a year and a half in, I had a really severe relapse. And that, I think, was actually a gift because it sort of was getting worse to get me better. And that's where I really had this trauma break, if you will, and a massive another surge of meningitis and encephalitis, which is essentially a neuroinflammatory disease. So coming out of that, I felt like, oh my gosh, you sort of have this experience of losing your mind a little bit and losing the ability to control your consciousness. At 27 years old, I think by then I was 28, I was not okay with that. I was very concerned. I really wanted to get my life back. I was also in severe pain. I was incredibly scared. I was completely dependent on my husband. We would celebrate if I watered the plants that day. At the time, I had a black lab pit. His name was Bodie. We called him Bodie. His full name was Bodacious. He was just this 80-pound, bigger than life, wild animal that I swear was a stallion and a panther in past lives. And Kevin and I had gotten him like a month before we got married. So he was our son. And we had him from the time he was I could wash him in my hands. I don't think we were actually supposed to buy him. He was so young. We got him at some grocery store in Laguna Beach when we were buying margarita mix to have a barbecue with some friends celebrating for our upcoming wedding. So Bodhi was this incredible teacher in my life and this incredible angel and guide. And during that time that I was so sick, Kevin was working so hard. He took on all the responsibility, and all the joy in our life was gone. We loved to snowboard, we loved to play, we loved to party, we loved to work, we loved to make money, we were just on fire. The two of us, we would think something and then we would just live it. It was incredible. I'm just so grateful for that experience. And then we also had the experience of that being completely taken away from us. And I couldn't walk down the street without sitting down to rest and usually cry before I could walk back. So it was pretty profound. And what happened during that time that changed my life forever, which I think is sort of the most important part of this introduction, is that I received a download. I received a message from the intelligence of life, and the intelligence of life was working through my constant companion, what I call a God dog, Bodhi. One day, Bodhi, I was, again, every single day exhausted and in pain and laying on the couch with ice packs around my head. And one of the things I did love to do around 4 o'clock in the afternoon was watch Oprah, because I just love Oprah. Okay. Does everyone our age love Oprah? And this was before TiVo. And so I had gotten out of bed, moved to the couch, gotten myself set up on the couch, and I wanted to watch Oprah. And suddenly Bodhi starts going wild. I mean, not a little wild. This is an 80-pound wild animal completely freaking out. Okay. Running in circles, barking at me. So I'm yelling at him to lay down. He doesn't want to listen. So I'm finally like, fine, I'll take you outside. So we go outside. We go just right across the street where the field where he played literally every day. I couldn't walk very far. He just went to the same place every day. And, you know, as humans, if we went to the same place every day, we don't really find much joy there, right? Mm-hmm. We usually would then start to use that as a story to go downhill. Well, Bodhi found immense joy in this exact same field every day. And so that day, what he did was he ran more wild and lightning fast than ever. And I, of course, was on a time clock. I didn't want to miss the beginning of Oprah. And I was being nasty to him. I was yelling and I was cussing and I was just demanding that he come back. And the more I did that, the more he wouldn't listen. And so I finally get him to come back towards me, but I couldn't like capture him to put his leash back on him. He just loved to run free. And so he finally like would stay in front of me, but he started running circles around me. And he would just run these circles around me, kicking up dirt, like dirt that's like muddy and everything. And then he stopped right in front of me and he just barked as loud as he could in my face. And he had this huge string of snot wrapped around his snout, you know, and he's like, you know, black lab snout. And he's just like, rah, 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 rah. And his eyes were, literally like the fire of God coming out of his eyes. His ears were up. His body was pulsing. He had been running and playing and leaping like this crazy lion, stallion, panther that what his soul was. And I could literally see his energy out beyond his body. And I was just like, whoa, like what's happening right now? And he got me. And I stopped in that moment and I looked at him and I was like, right, well, if I had a bodacious life, I would be happy too. And I just started ranting. It must be nice to have a bodacious life. You're so wild and free. It must be nice to have a bodacious life. You're so strong and healthy. It must be nice to have a bodacious life. And I was just ranting and ranting. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second. That's it. Like, it's a bodacious life. That's what I'm missing. I'm missing my bodacious life. Like that's what I want to create. And in that moment, I felt this surge of joy come through me. I felt this remembrance of who I was. I felt this remembrance of my love for life. I felt this remembrance of how I was just like him. Mm-hmm. And how angry I was because I couldn't play the way he was playing with so much freedom and so much strength and so much innocence. So I had that moment and I started actually like, it was just like this portal opened and I could hear, it was like I could hear what some people might call God, what today I refer to as the force of love or the intelligence of creation. Whatever it was, there was a wisdom that poured through me that told me I was going to be a yoga teacher. I was going to be a meditation teacher. I was going to have a yoga studio. I was going to call it Bodacious Living. And I was I was so excited. I hadn't walked so fast in over a year. I walked back to the house as fast as I could. Of course, I still turned Oprah on, I have to admit. And I started journaling about this bodacious living. And it took many years, but it did actually end up unfolding. And what happened was when my husband came home from work that day, it was the first time he had seen me since I had gotten sick, excited and creative and with ideas and with an idea of how I could live and what the future would look like and what my purpose was on the planet. And so he jumped on board and he's like, look, I just want you to be happy, you know? And so he started playing along and we started coming up with this whole game of like, well, what would Bodes do? You know, like if I was having a really, really hard day, what would Bodes do? Well, Bodes would like rest and have no shame for it. Like he would bodaciously rest, or and we just, if there was a challenge, what would Bodes do? And we just started playing this game, like, what is a bodacious life, and what would Bodes do, and what are the qualities about him that we love so much? And in that way, we started taking steps into the life that we created. It did take some time. I, after that, went through that relapse I told you about, where things got worse before they got better. I ended up getting into yoga teacher training, was the one thing that I knew. Because here, when I had this download, I thought, well, what kind of yoga am I going to teach? I have no freaking idea. I can't even get off the couch. That was one of the things Kevin said to me. He's like, well, you might want to try walking around the block before you think you're going to be a yoga teacher, I was like, no, I heard it. I swear. So, but he believed in me, and we started, looking into it. And as soon as I had enough energy to start taking steps towards functionality, I looked into yoga teacher training. And sometime prior to that, around that time that I had this awakening with Bodhi, I had been getting acupuncture, and my acupuncture doctor had actually given me a mantra. He gave me the mantra Om Namah Shivaya. He introduced me to Siddha Yoga. He started giving me some tapes of deep like chanting that takes you really deep into healing trance, and so that was happening at that time too. Everything was sort of, the fabric of intelligence was coming together and starting to lead me onto the path that I've been living now for the last 20 years. So eventually, fast forward, I did do the yoga teacher training. I ended up doing 3 years of Anusara yoga teacher training. It was in the very beginning of the very first Anusara yoga school was opened in Berkeley. And I wanted independence, so I started traveling up to Berkeley and living half the month at the Siddha Yoga ashram, and volunteering, and volunteering at the yoga studio and doing the training. And eventually that training got me well enough to go back to work. And I did go back to work with the one intention. And that one intention was, I was working in order to gain the financial resources to then live my dream and live my passion. And I used to lay on the ashram floor in the temple in absolute shaking tears, begging God, Spirit, Mama Gaia, whatever it was, I didn't know, but I just was begging, please give me the tools, please give me energy, please show me how to heal, and I will share that with the world. So when I got well, I knew, well, my responsibility is to live up to this promise. And so eventually, after a few years of returning to a successful career in critical care pharmaceuticals in San Diego, I said, okay, well, we're back to everything we touch turns to gold. Success was on the rise. And I just knew, like, I'm not here to just make money and like buy things and have 350-gallon fish tanks. Like, that's just not why I'm here. And Kevin, again, was very supportive. And in 2007, we took the leap, and I bought the Carlsbad yoga studio that was on Anusara studio at the time. It was called the Yoga Center. Beautiful community there that I had been teaching in and part of. And we then launched the vision of Bodacious living in that space. And we did that, for several years, and we weathered the economic crisis. And it's been interesting how life has in my life, and I don't know if this has happened in your life, but in my life, I've sort of been given the quan and then gone through this experience, like I've gone through then a contraction. Mm-hmm. And then in that contraction, I've then learned how to find my way back to the alignment. So I know that we'll talk more about that, but eventually I closed the studio. My relationship with Kevin evolved in a really beautiful way, and we're still very dear friends, and he's one of the dearest people in my life, and he's living the life that he's meant to live, and I'm living the life that I'm meant to live, and we honor each other fully. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for his support. I then, after the end of our relationship, fell in love with a cinematographer, and that took me on a wild ride. And it was just right on the cusp of the ending of my marriage, the closing of the studio, and looking back, you go, oh, it was all divinely guided.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, I was producing film, and I produced my first film. It's called Dream, and it was a film about the art and culture of Burning Man, and how dreams do come true, and how we make our dreams come true. I was also associate producer on Spark, which was one of the first features created about the art and culture of Burning Man. That was paired with Dream. We were on both those teams. That led into working with amazing leading technology companies in the world like Autodesk, and creating video content around how we create a better world. And that led into a project that is just now recently released, which is called, the film project is called The Portal. And that's something that we worked on for 7 years to bring into realization. But that was all part of that time frame of really continuing to dive deeper into the truth of who I was, to believe in it, to follow the guidance, and to constantly stay true to that promise that I had made during those prayers, to serve, to serve the force of life, and to serve that which heals, and to share that with the world.
Wow, that is quite a story.
Sorry it was so long, but that's what you said. Start from when you were a little kid. It's been quite a ride.
Yes, it has. And I met you when you had just started, I think, in the cinematography.
Yes,
We
7 years
had
ago.
met, yes, at a Joshua Tree at a retreat with Nayurka, and you were the yoga, I have to say, goddess, because it's
Oh,
such an amazing experience. And every morning we'd wake up early, we'd see the sunrise over the mountains. If anyone's ever been to Joshua Tree, there's mountains on all sides. This is kind of in the desert, and it's so peaceful. And we'd come and we'd gather as a group at the pool, and Heather, you would lead us through this just amazing yoga where we just connected with each other. We connected with each other's hearts. It was just, indescribable in words. And I always think of it as such a magical time. And I told you before we got on the podcast, I still have a picture of the two of us from that time that is in my bedroom, in a little frame in my bedroom, because I love to remember that time. And so, you went through a lot to get to that yoga
yeah.
instruction, but I can tell you from my standpoint, you touched my life in a way that it'll never be the same. And I'm sure you've touched the lives of so many people through your Bodacious, yoga center and boutique, and just being in that community is
Thank
just,
you.
I am just so thankful that we met, and so thankful that I can share you now with everyone on
Wow.
the podcast, so they can also learn from you and just get the gifts that you have to give. So thank you
Wow.
so much.
Thank you. And thank you for being there fully, then and now, because that's how we had that experience together. It was a really shared experience. And I remember, our group coming to tears in the closing of our sessions, and how we used movement and sound and breath and connection to prepare us for the day of supreme influence with Nirka. That
Yes,
was
and it was 8 days, and after 8 days, I don't think anyone wanted to go home.
right.
It was
Yeah.
just so wonderful. We just wanted to keep going, but of course, we go back to our lives. But it was just a really magical, wonderful time. So, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, tell me a little bit about how yoga helped you to heal.
Mm. Wow. Well, first of all, we think of yoga as like this asana practice that we see in the West today. Um, I would say the yoga that has helped me heal and continues to help me heal is the ancient science of alchemy. And it's a science of how we actually connect with our own true nature, and how we use that which we are. We are sensory awareness beings, so we use our relationship with our senses, and with our body to basically tune what we could call a vehicle or a vessel or a temple or our body. I like to play with words because we can just go off into an esoteric conversation, but that same conversation can be had on a really practical level. Like, we're humans, we have a physical body. That physical body is a living sentient being of its own. We are a life force that inhabits the body, and there's a relationship there. And so, the word yoga means to yoke or to have union. Essentially, it's the integration, or I like to just say relationship, between your life force and your physical body, and that, all the senses of that body. And so when I got so sick and I was in so much pain and I felt so disconnected from my life force, so much so that I was sleeping 19 plus hours a day, really it was baby steps into creating this relationship. And the only way to take those baby steps was by using the tools from the science of yoga. There was nothing that a Western doctor could tell me that could lead me back into relationship with with my awareness, with my consciousness, and with my senses, and with my body. In order to heal your body, you really have to have a healthy relationship, or at least a communicative relationship, with your organs, with your cells, with your, there's an entire universe happening inside of this skin.
Hmm.
There's an entire universe happening inside of every cell. Every cell within our body has its own mitochondria, which is its own little engine. Like, it's its own universe. So, you know, hopefully that's accessible and understandable, but it's like, it's not just how flexible you are or how quiet your mind can be. When I had the yoga studio, that was the number one sort of barrier. People would be drawn into the boutique, and then they would say, oh, you do yoga classes? Oh, my aunt does that, or my daughter does that. Oh, I can't do that because, and I can't. And I'm thinking, you have no idea, when you're looking at me, that I spent 3 years in bed and I could barely walk to the couch. Okay. let me tell you, you think you can't, you think you can't do that. I would crawl onto my yoga mat and just lay on the yoga mat. And it was really actually Rodney Yee stress relief practice, which there's a video where I think they're 20-minute segments. I would do the easiest segment for 5 minutes at a time. So it's like attuning to your breath. Like, what is the rhythm of your breath doing? Attuning to your diaphragm. Like, is your diaphragm stuck, or can it actually expand fully in order for your lungs to receive enough life force in order to then oxygenate your blood and your organs? So, this is yoga. Yes, we then start to move into this asana practice, but like, that's just one outer manifestation. The yoga I practice today in my current healing, my body doesn't want to do anything linear like that. That causes even more pain. So now I find my yoga through oscillation. So obviously there's a lot to unpack there, but essentially yoga is simply an invitation to know yourself and to optimize your relationship with your body, the sentient being of your body. And that is the foundation of healing. So,
Wow. And you, thank you. And you mentioned, your healing today.
mhm.
So do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, my intro was getting kind of long, so I decided to leave that part out. But like, I guess we can go there now. Again, it's one of those. It's one of those amazing sort of expansion contraction cycles of life. When I got sick the first time 20 years ago, it was called meningitis and encephalitis. That's what they told me in the hospital and when they let me out with my pile of meds. But they never really told me anything else. When I could barely get out of bed or function at all, a year and a half, 2 years later, they just told me, well, you're depressed, like your brain has been through a lot. Let's give you some, antidepressants. And it sort of went on like that. Then I had that really serious relapse that I told you about where, I sort of felt that I lost control over my consciousness. And that was super scary. And that led to a sort of a crisis moment that demanded that I make a shift in the way that I was addressing my health. And that's what brought me to integrative medicine. And it was an integrative medicine doctor that actually saved my life. But he saved my life, but we still never knew why I was still sick. So in fact, we just ran tests, so many tests. I mean, the amount of money that has been spent it's in a lot of ways devastating and heartbreaking. You could say, I could have had a mansion, I could have had this, I could have had that. And then you come back to realizing, well, the only thing that matters is the health of the body. Like, this is the mansion, so this is the temple. Mm-hmm. But, our mind likes to sort of go down that path. But we basically spent years trying to pull me out of it. But we ended up saying to each other one day, all right, it's not about what it is or why it's still happening. It's about how do we manage it and how do we basically get you back on the road? How do we, because I was just desperate to be functional. And, through starting to step outside the box and do all the yoga teacher training, I was starting to have a life again. And I was just desperate for a life. And so we just came up with a protocol that would keep me going. And it was very expensive. And I had to maintain it, but it did get me back into life. So I didn't think much about it. I was just so grateful that I wasn't stuck in bed anymore. And that and it took about 5 years to get off of medications, off of pain pills, off of Neurontin, off of all these things. But I never was able to quit our protocol, like, all these IVs, specialty IVs and chelations and specialty diets and acupuncture. And I mean, basically I was like the highest maintenance person you could ever imagine. And, everyone would say, well, you're like the picture of health. And it's like, well, it's because I spend, at least one day out of every week and, thousands of dollars a month on propping this thing up so that it appear, and so yes, it's vibrant and healthy, but there's holes in all the tires, basically. So that went on. I sort of have to give you that background because what's happening now seems to come out of left field for people, but that's only because I wasn't showing the world what I was going through, which is another piece of this important story. So all I cared about was I wanted to stop identifying with the illness. I wanted to never be thought of as sick. I wanted to never be called sick. It had destroyed my relationship with my husband in a lot of ways because he became my total caregiver instead of my playmate. It destroyed all my relationships. It took everything from me to be the sick girl. And so there was that day I decided with Dr. Moss, like, yeah, let's just figure out how to get me functioning and like never talk about this again. And that's what we did. And then I thought my job is to create a bodacious life. My job is to inspire a bodacious life, which at the time I felt was all about only being strong and playful. And I never ever wanted to go back to that bed. And so that went on for 15 plus years. And then, as I became single, my marriage dissolved and evolved. I financial things changed through the financial economic crisis that we went through. I slowly wasn't able to keep up the protocol as much, but I was getting away with more. Like I kept finding that line. So I was sort of in and out of this remission with this mysterious illness that I had no idea what it was or why it would kick my butt. I used to explain to people, sometimes I feel like I'm going along, and just when I'm running and when the road is the smoothest, I hit the biggest pothole you could ever imagine. And I fall flat on my face, and I would just be sick. I mean, pain in the back of the neck, full, crushing pain in my face and my eyes and my spine, burning in my whole body, total exhaustion. I mean, like devastated, sick. So when we went through all the stress of essentially losing everything we had built during the economic crisis and breakdown, I started getting sick again. And that's when we had the studio. And I didn't want anyone to know, because I thought, God forbid anyone know that me, a yoga teacher and the director of Bodacious Living, be sick. So I hid it. I stuffed it. I hid it. And I again figured out, okay, how do I keep propping this thing up and keep going? That was like 2009. So then I kept it going. And then, like I said, I could manage the treatments less. And then the film that was just released actually took me to Sydney to live in Sydney to produce the film. We actually made a different film before we made the one that just got released, which is another part of the story. But basically, I was living in Sydney for a year, and while I was there, I got exposed to black mold, and I was more susceptible than usual because I had not been able to keep up my treatments as much the year and a half, 2 years prior to that. And so all of a sudden I started having severe neurological symptoms. I started feeling the weakness in my spine, the burning in my spine, the locking down in the back of my neck, the burning in my eyes, the inability to control my emotions. Like it was really, really scary. But here I was in another country, completely away from my entire healing team. And we were working 70 hours a week. And I was like, so I was just more caffeine, I was just doing anything I could to hide it, because I just wanted to hide. This was my secret. This whole illness thing had been my secret. And so, again, this is a little bit of the lengthy side of the story. The reason I'm sharing it is because it's just a mirror for what we all do, of how we run. Mm-hmm. We run from what our body needs. We run from the truth because we're so afraid of what it's going to cost us. And I was scared to death. So I find out while I'm in this other country that they don't have the treatments available over there that were necessary to keep me going. You can't get glutathione IVs. You can't do chelations. You can't do B shots. You can't do nutritional IVs. It was like all of my tools were taken from me. Mm. And I was under pressure. And now I was exposed to mold. I was breaking down big time. Okay. And just still hiding. You can't even imagine how much I was hiding. And at the time we were working on, the first iteration of what is now the portal, but the first iteration of that was actually called Superhuman. And I was working with superhumans, literally interviewing superhumans every day, and breaking down and hiding. So this was in 2016. So I end up, like, out of total desperation, I end up in this specialist office, which was, again, another gift. It's like, here I am, all my safety is taken from me. And it ends up being the biggest gift of my life, because now I'm with a different doctor. And she immediately looked at me and said, you have neurological Lyme disease. It's completely raging and out of control. And I can't even believe you're like a miracle sitting in front of me. How you're doing this, I have no idea. And I was like, oh, I've got all my tricks. I know exactly how to hide. I had all my yoga tools, all my breathing tools, all my icing tools, all the things. And
she said you had neurological Lyme disease?
Neurological Lyme disease.
So this was a new diagnosis.
All those 15 years, all of the money, all of the treatments, it was all to hide and manage this thing. And we had called it, we chalked it up to its mysterious illness, and this is just how it's going to be for me. And I'm just, so many doctors told me I was lucky that I was alive. I was lucky that I had my eyesight. I was lucky that I could walk. I was already defying everything they ever told me by working and playing and being off of meds. It was like, kind of like my doctor was like count your blessings and kind of get over it. I didn't realize there was an actual infection in my brain and my nervous system that was not being addressed. It was only being managed and suppressed. And so that was a huge, huge awakening. And I'll never forget, that Dr. Seaton in Sydney, Australia looked at me and she's just like, girl, you need to stop everything you're doing right now and get into treatment, or I'm not going to be able to get you out of bed. You have about 2 years before I won't be able to get you out of bed. And I looked at her, my sassy, bodacious self, and I was like, you obviously don't know me. First of all, I'm here working on a film that's taken 5 years to raise the money for. And there is no way in hell that I'm going to stop working. There is nothing I love more than working. And there is no way in hell I'm ever going back to bed. There is no way in hell I'm ever telling anyone I'm sick. And there is no way, and I just went through my list and I was just defiant. And she was like, well, first of all, I can't believe you're working on a film called Superhuman, because you are the superhuman. The fact that you're working at all right now is completely defying everything I know about medicine. And, you need to hear me. You're in trouble. And I was like, look, I'm just going to keep doing what I've been doing. I have to finish this. So she tried to help me manage it. And we did. We sort of kept the wheels on. I worked another, 4 or 5 months really intensively. I got back to the States and I started a new project, but it was in San Diego where I could be close to my medical team that knew how to keep me going. And I just was like, right, it's going to cost, $2,500, $3,000 a month, whatever it costs, I have to do it in order to keep working. I'm a single woman. I'm on my own. So that's what I did. And unfortunately, I ended up in an environment where I was allowing myself to be involved in an environment that was unhealthy and out of integrity and incredibly emotionally hostile. But I was so focused on hiding this. I was so focused on doing it on my own. I was so focused on refusing to believe that I could ask for help. And I was so focused on making money. I thought that I had to make money to make up for everything I had lost, in those years prior. And so I sort of let things evolve in a way that wasn't super healthy, but I just kept doing what I had always done. And had I been in a healthy environment and things played out the way that they were promised to me, I probably would have been okay. I could have pulled it. My doctor felt like we could have pulled it, but things were getting more and more hostile. And it was very upsetting to me. And I was working 70 hours a week. And I couldn't walk away because I had this ball and chain to these treatments and hiding this whole thing. And all of a sudden, fall of 2017, my brain and my spine just goes massive inflammatory episode, which we were keeping on edge. I was getting Toradol shots for inflammation and stuff like that. But it was like a raging fire in my spine and my brain. And my doctor just said, you can't keep going. This is going to kill you. And he put me on medical leave, and I sold all of my remaining belongings in order to, and I ran to Ojai to live with one of my best friends, again, to just cocoon and try to resolve this on my own. I went into neurotherapy at the Wetke Institute, and I tried to keep doing some part-time work. And then in August of 2018, another massive 8-day meningitis encephalitis, full nervous system bonfire happened. And that's when I got stopped in my tracks. And that's when, essentially that's when Superwoman died.
Mm.
That's when I had to let it all go and ask the world for help. And now, here we are more than a year later. I've been in treatment at the Clear Center for Health in Mill Valley with a phenomenal, just groundbreaking integrative medicine doctor who specializes in neuroimmunological disease, and in really severe cases like mine. And we now have the neurological inflammation under control. She feels we're about 50% of the way there with the rehabilitation process. I've been doing extensive brain training for the last 2 years, and I'm rehabilitated. Literally, talk about superhuman. I've rehabilitated my brain, and I am continuing to rehabilitate my brain. And I'm basically in the midst of what I would call a full-blown temple remodel.
Mm-hmm.
And it is completely controlling my life. And actually, maybe I need to reframe that. I just felt Murica, like I was like, oh, reframe. It's directing my life. It's directing my life. And the guiding light is that my number one priority is to be in total alignment with the truth of who I am, and to listen deeply to the needs of this temple. My ability to walk, and my ability to be in this world cognitively, and my ability to even be alive has been quite threatened through this experience. And so nothing else exists now. Everything else has fallen away. And this is the guiding light. In terms of diagnosis, I don't identify with labels, but for people to be able to understand diagnosis, because I am, one of my missions is to help people understand this invisible illness. It's the diagnosis is neurological Lyme disease, which has become chronic, and it was untreated for 20 years. So they also call it embedded Lyme or neuroborreliosis, with co-infections of babesia, and meningitis, and encephalitis. When it comes, Lyme happens in stages similar to cancer. And so when it gets to these later stages, it will present as meningitis and encephalitis, these massive neuroinflammatory episodes, which then start to shut down the brain. That's why I have to do so much brain rehabilitation and bring my brain back online. Also, there's a diagnosis of biotoxic illness related to mycotoxin exposure. So I have really high levels of like black molds in my system. And, through the trauma in my childhood, I had some extreme exposures to petrochemicals, so solvents and petrochemicals, traumatic brain injury caused by the inflammatory episodes and the petrochemicals. And it's incredibly humbling. And I'm learning every day, how to listen, how to follow, how to ask for help. And I'm, I thought I had figured it out, like how to heal and how to be healthy and how to live this bodacious life. And I'm on a much more intensive Jedi training.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the spiral, right?
Mm-hmm.
Much more intensive training this time around.
Yeah, so there are people who are having the symptoms that you have, or they've already been, diagnosed with some kind of Lyme disease, and, going through similar things that you're going through. So if someone is having these type of symptoms, or think that, something, they have something in line with what you've been experiencing, and let's say that they don't know what to do, where would be the first place to start to heal? Because it seems like some parts of the medical community really don't know what to do with this, and then there's other parts that they're doing a lot with it. Where would you start if you had a friend that has Lyme disease, or is having that same experience that you're having?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I would say, even if it's not Lyme disease, if you feel like you have some sort of mysterious, invisible illness and something is not right with you, and everyone keeps telling you, you look fine, or doctors you go to are telling you that all your test results are normal, I would say look deeper and believe in yourself. And I've started creating a network of love that is basically the path to radiant healing, where I'm sharing everything that I'm learning on this journey. So there's really great resources available on the network of love, and you can access that through Patreon at patreon.com/network of love. We also have a directory, a growing directory of resources available for radiant healing and radiant health to members of the network of love. Because when we start healing, it's a multi-dimensional experience. The one-dimensional healing of the allopathic model is not going to cut it for this reality, for this type of illness. And so there's a lot of depth there. And it's happening really on a massive scale because of, largely because of climate change. Because with climate change, there's been sort of like the spreading of the ticks, through the change in the migration of the birds, and the ticks travel on the birds. So, we used to believe that something like Lyme disease only existed on the East Coast. That's not true. It's been actually, declared an epidemic in all 50 states and in most countries. We are connected. We are all connected. So there is no separation. And, climate change is one of the ways that these sort of biotoxic diseases are being spread now. The other issue with climate change is that, they're spraying chemicals. And this is now being admitted. Our government's admitting that in order to try and protect us from the heating up of the planet, they are spraying chemicals to try and deflect and reflect the heat off of the planet. That's changing our weather patterns. It's also making us sick. So a lot of times when I'm learning in this process is that there are some of us who have a gene mutation. I think it's the MTHFR gene that makes it harder for us to clear toxins from our body. We do not have as open of detox pathways, and again, remember that your body is its own sentient being. It's a living being. It has all of these dimensions and functions. And when you're not able to detox, it's like your filter is clogged. It's just like having a clogged filter on any other sort of a machine, and that backs up and we get sick. So one of the first places that I would look if you feel like you're having an experience of mysterious illness is I would look for an ILADS certified doctor. And maybe I can give you that link and we can put it in the comments. And I certainly have this information posted at the Network of Love. But these doctors are what they call Lyme literate doctors, who are generally also mold toxin, mold illness literate as well. And they're just doctors who have basically been really forced to break the rule books because the patients weren't getting better with the medications that they were being given. The thing that's really strange about Lyme specifically is that it morphs and changes. There are many different strains. We're just trying to catch up with this bacteria and the way that it clusters with other bacteria. Our testing is way behind. It's super stealth. It can go intracellular. It starts like one of the things that's happening with me, and if you have a long-term untreated infection of it, is it goes in and it breaks down the mitochondrial function at the cellular level. And remember earlier in the podcast we talked about these mitochondria being the engines in the universe of every single cell. So if it breaks down the mitochondrial function and then you're producing new cells, you're now reproducing dysfunctional cells. And so every time that you go through another layer of producing new cells in your body, they're a little more dysfunctional in their ability to produce energy. And so that's one of the things that's like, I can show up and do this with you, but I can't consistently show up for anything because I don't have any stamina or bandwidth in my energy. And it's because of this cellular energy production breakdown that's happening because of the way these bacteria can go intracellular, which is super strange and doesn't exist in other diseases. But I'd say thirdly, so I gave you, first of all, connect with a network of love. So secondly, get yourself to that, progressive doctor who's willing to break the mold and treat your entire system and see you wholly for who you are, and who understands that science is continually evolving and medicine is continually evolving, and knows that what you're experiencing or representing actually is an invitation to learn. And then thirdly, I would say, start to really look at your relationship with love. Because one of the things that I'm coming to learn through this experience is that our own relationship with what I like to call the force of love, meaning the intelligence, vibration, love in its purest form, like agape love. We need to be having a relationship with that love that is not dependent upon our relationship with another human being. Because one of the things that I know for sure is that as human beings, we are evolving, we're learning. Human love can break down. Especially if you're syncing up with a wound mate, you just, start triggering each other's wounds, breakdown's kind of part of the story. But agape love, the force of love, the unconditional love, the love which created you, the love that you are, that does not break down. That is timeless. That is boundless. That is what yogis and philosophers have been furiously trying to make sure that we would remember by leaving behind, in the most ancient languages, in scrolls and written on caves, maps on how to access this relationship with the force of love, this relationship with the intelligence that informs us and that informs everything in our experience here. So, I, in a really non-esoteric, description of that, I can say I had a session with, I think it was Dr. Cowden, who's one of the leading Lyme doctors in the world. And the number one thing that he said to me in the one session that we had was, Lyme is only there if there's a reason. I was like, okay. He's like, that's actually true of any disease. It's only there if there's a reason. And I was like, okay, well, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, what do you mean? And he said, well, with Lyme specifically, especially a neurological Lyme, where this bacteria has embedded into your nervous system and your brain, it is filling in the gap for something. Like it can't magnetize. It had to have something to grow into. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean? He said, well, usually it's a dysfunction in your relationship with love. And it's usually a mother wound. And so, my mom left us when I was 5 years old and left the fold of the family, the religion. It was this massive, massive break for me at a very young age, which then created sort of a susceptibility in my nervous system, sort of a break. And like, if you start to, if you watch like the Heal documentary or emotion, things like that, where we're learning how to quantumly heal in our relationship between vibration and emotions and sickness and things like that, is like if you have had some sort of trauma or breakdown, it lives in your nervous system. And it can live in your nervous system because we are electromagnetic frequency channels. And our brain runs off of electromagnetic frequency. And so when there's a disruption in the pattern and the safety, when your foundation, when there's no safety in your nervous system, it vibrates at a different frequency. So when you don't have a solid relationship with love, like with the intelligence of your love, you're going to be unsafe. You're going to feel unsafe. You're going to vibrate unsafe. Your nervous system is unsafe. Your nervous system is going to constantly be looking, and the two vibrate towards each other. So again, another long answer. Thanks for letting me just riff, but these are the things that I'm learning and exploring. And, I share a lot more about this on the Network of Love. And I also am available for one-on-one sessions. If this is something that, you're experiencing and you want to explore more, we can dive into it.
Well, thank you for expanding, because my experience has been when people have Lyme, they just don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. They don't know where it's coming from. And they're wondering, why me? Why am I getting this chronic, painful, experience of life? And what you talked about safety is so critical. And it makes me think, I wonder how many other diseases or mental diseases are just because of not feeling safe with ourselves. Or sometimes it can happen early on in life, but I bet that could, if you had a traumatic experience even as an adult, that could create that.
Yeah, totally. And this comes into, the core of all of that relationship is our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I definitely would also point you to brain health and to the Amen Clinic and the Wetke Institute and the NeuroFit Marin Training Center. 40 years of Zen. There's these incredible centers that are helping us actually work with the health of our brain, because no matter what age we are, if we experience a trauma, which is going to happen, this is life. I think we have to normalize the fact that we're all traumatized. Okay. We all have some type of PTSD, but in the past, we haven't understood or known how to work with the organ of the brain. We've just tried to give pills. But we can actually rehabilitate the brain, rehabilitate the nervous system. That's what I'm learning. And again, I share a lot more about that. I actually share a lot in detail about these experiences on Instagram, Network of Love on Instagram, plus on the Patreon page. But I do want to just go a little deeper on something you said, and thank you for that reflection. Something I feel, and I'm exploring this, so something I'm sort of experiencing as a misunderstanding in the way that we interpret and sort of regurgitate a lot of the teachings around quantum healing and quantum health and law of attraction and all of our, what could be called new age sort of personal development concepts, is that sometimes we're oversimplifying things. And, in my experience, it's not, the disease isn't just because of this one problem I had with having trauma as a child. It's multifaceted. We are multidimensional, multifaceted. It's not any one thing. And that's, if we look at this from the highest perspective, Lyme is a bacteria. Bacteria and viruses have been evolving our humanity since the beginning of time. They were here first. Bacteria, viruses, and fungus. If you can't process those and get them out of your body, you have a biotoxic overload or a biotoxic illness, which is part of what's going on for me now. It can create the brain injury. It can create all this stuff. But ultimately, they were here first. And when we get sick, it forces us, because it makes us so desperate for answers. And if we can get past the why me and move into the how am I part of a solution that is being created through me, then we become part of the evolution of humanity. And that to me is right relationship with this experience. And one of the things that is really difficult in going through this, because it's so hard, especially in the detox cycles and the treatment cycles, the depression is real. I reach some of the deepest, darkest, lowest points. I talk about it really openly, and there's some incredible there's an incredible interview called Meeting Suicide on the Network of Love, because I, again and again, am brought to the doorstep of suicide, because sometimes the pain of this disease and the process of trying to heal from this disease and trying to rid this disease from my body is so incredibly painful. And what happens is, when you're killing off these sort of biotoxins, then you have an overload of neurotoxins, which then sends all these messages biochemically to your body and to your brain. And then from there, you have a cascade of thoughts and feelings. So, this whole idea that like we create with our thoughts and feelings is really super amazing, and it's an incredible tool. It's just that when you say to someone who's sick, like, oh, that's just happening because you don't have a good relationship with love, or that's just happening because you're thinking too negative all the time, which is an overgeneralization. That's not what you said, but it happens a lot, because it's an overgeneralization. We hear Joe Dispenza and we think, oh, just go to Joe Dispenza, you'll be fine. It's like, no. Get your doctor on board, listen deeply to your body, do the Joe Dispenza work, do your own listening and healing work, it's like, it is an entire, what I call, it's a mandala of healing. And it's an entire temple remodel that becomes the gateway to knowing the truth of who you are if you follow the crumbs along the path. What's really hard is that as you're, trying to follow the crumbs, you're also falling over, you're freaking exhausted, you feel like you want to kill yourself, it feels like you're never going to live your life again, it feels like you're just in constant pain. I mean, it gets dark. So did that answer your question?
Yes, it really,
okay.
yes, it did. And how does that affect, like, knowing the truth of who you are? Because you have these chemical things going on that could change your thoughts. You're sick, so you're going through these, why am I here? Or, maybe not feeling useful because you can't work like you wanted to work. You wanted to be productive. You wanted to make money. So how does that all go into the truth of who you are? Does that get all distorted as
Totally.
you're going through this?
Totally. And this is why I call it the Empress Jedi training. It's like Empress or Emperor. I mean, men go through this too, right? First of all, one thing I wanted to mention was that there's all that stuff of feeling sick and unproductive and unworthy, and and it's just like taking you. It's just like, if you can see it from the highest, it's like this story that's like just it's leading you down this path. It's like it's leading you down this path of like actually believing that you're worthless. And then what gets piled on top of it, because of the way that our society is now you're overwhelmed with the most unbelievable burden of costs for treatments. And for mysterious illness, biotoxic illness, traumatic brain injury, neurological Lyme disease, mold illness, all, this whole thing, it's all cash pay. It's all cash pay. And it's also like, it's like, that's why I say it's almost like the imaginal cells of the butterfly, because literally it puts you in a place where it's like, you're going to be in the biggest financial crisis you could ever imagine. You're going to be 100% dependent upon people around you. It doesn't go away in 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. It's like, this is a marathon, and the cost is a marathon. And so, it really does, when I created that talk with one of my therapists about meeting suicide, it's like, it's true. Like you literally come to the door, like I have, and many people who are going through this who I've spoken with, and we talk about this openly because it's so overwhelming. You come to the doorstep of like, oh my God, like, why am I even here? I came to the doorstep of, it doesn't feel like God really wants me here anymore. Like I don't have any energy to generate anything. Or have been points in my treatment where I've been so low on energy, I can't even ask for help. Because just asking for help is like this whole other huge thing that you have to go through. It's another like worthiness challenge. Like, and so if you start to look at it as almost like almost like the game of Survivor, it's like the game of life. It's like all of these challenges, all of these sort of fake, stories are being told to you. And I've referred to this as a holy war. Some people don't like me calling it that because they're trying to say, well, you should be romancing your illness, not being at war with it. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like if you've been where I've been, you might realize like sometimes there's just a fierceness to life. Sometimes there's just a fierceness. Like the holy war is where you face the darkest of the dark. You face that moment where you feel so unworthy, where you could believe, you really could believe that God doesn't want you here any longer. You really could. It really does feel that way when you're like, I can't afford my body. I can't afford my treatments. If I can't afford my treatments, this is a degenerative neurological disease that ends up with you losing your cognitive function, losing your ability to move. You end up in a wheelchair. I mean, the whole thing just goes like this. And once you're further down the hole, the harder it is to get out. But we're talking treatments $7,000 to $10,000 a month. I mean, the story that gets told to you it is profoundly scary. I was doing some fear work the other day and realized everything I'm most afraid of is what I'm facing and living through now. And then I realized, oh, right. This is the invitation. This is where I'm facing what I'm most afraid of and not believing it. Like that. So when you, getting back to your question, clearly my cacao tea is got me on a roll, but plus it feels good to be able to talk about this stuff because I'm alone so much. So thank you for the opportunity. But that place, that darkest place, that place where, you're a nanosecond away from believing your life is not worthy. There's no reason for you to be here. You're a nanosecond away from, beginning to make the plan to take your own life. You're a nanosecond away from, believing in every cell of your being that you're worthless. And then there's that 1 nanosecond where you go, is this even true?
Mm. So critical. Is this even true?
Is this even true? This is like where like a famous New Yorker reframe could come in, right? Because you're looking down this one frame and it's just like, the mind is just like a camera lens. It's going to tell you the story of wherever you're pointing the lens. It doesn't mean that stuff's not happening and that's not true. And that's the misunderstanding I feel sort of exists, like the depth that sort of, is missing from a lot of the way we talk to each other about healing, because the truth is it does get that gnarly. The truth is it is that dark. The truth is it does hurt that much. The truth is it does bring you to your knees. The truth is you're gonna be in the holy war. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to look for the magic door, and that invisible, my great grandfather, not to diverse too much, but this is important. My great grandfather designed one of the most famous airplanes of all time. It's the Piper Cub. My great grandfather, C.G. Taylor, he grew up with polio his whole life. He wanted to fly because he couldn't drive. And his mission was to design planes, the private planes. He designed one of the first private planes. And so I lived with him when my mother left. The opportunity and the gift in that experience was I then moved in with my mom's parents, and then my mom's mom took in her parents, and her father was C.G. Taylor. So in my formative years, I lived with this brilliant inventor, and he used to say to me, look for the magic door. Look for the magic door. When you think you're stuck, when you think there is no way out, look for the magic door. And that's sort of where I've gone in those moments of darkness. I've looked for the magic door. I've asked, is this even true? I've asked, I've had the conversation with God. If you want me here, show me. Mm-hmm. I'm fully available to be here. Show me. Show me the support for me staying alive. Show me my purpose on the planet. And so you begin to, again, and this comes back to your first question about yoga, like how is yoga, how we heal? Well, this is the yoga. This is the yoga of the mind. This is the yoga of your relationship with the intelligence, the intelligent force that is the creative force. And so, and that is the truth of who you are. You are love. You are the force of love. The force of love is animating you. And so, you know, if you're the force of love and then you're thinking it's time to extinguish this light, you know, take a moment, look for the magic door, you know, call on the force of love, you know, call on the force of love and say, show me, and start asking these questions. And as you ask the deeper questions, you know, some of the, I think I told you before, my 5 favorite questions are, how is this the best thing that ever happened to me? How am I part of a solution that needs to be created now? How is my experience part of the solution? And I can't remember the other ones that I gave you right now. Those are 2 of my favorites, but I think that it goes deeper into basically, how can I be part of the solution? How can this be the best thing that ever happened to me? How can I know the truth of who I am? How can I be more connected with the force of love? How can I be a channel for the force of love? How can I be a channel for a radiant healing? And you just start going down this path of powerful questions. This is another thing from New York, right? Which is where we met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, essentially the truth of who you are is you are intelligence. You are creative intelligence. When we leave the body is left, the creative intelligence is gone, the life force. Creative intelligence is life force. So it wants to be talked to. It wants to have a relationship with you. You want to have a relationship with you. And if your body is breaking down, it is telling you you're out of sync. You're out of divine relationship with yourself. And that's why I say your relationship with love is the foundation for your health. It doesn't mean you don't go to the doctor. You know, by all means, listen to as many Abraham videos as you possibly can. I certainly do. By all means, listen to Joe Dispenza. I think he's amazing. By all means, you know, do your sound healing, do your yoga, do your positive thought, do your affirmations. But do not go to the doctor. That's where things break down. You know, we're multifaceted. We need to heal our auric field. We need to heal our mind. We need to heal our emotional body. We need to heal the nervous system. We need to heal the brain. We need to heal every organ. We need to heal every cell. We need to heal the mitochondrial function. We need to heal our relationships. And ultimately, you know, Lyme disease, many of us who have gone through this sort of have this little bit of a running joke of like, this may be the imaginal cells for humanity, because it will force you to awaken. You will either kill yourself, want to die and just live in the state of wanting to die all the time and be completely worthless to society and to yourself, or you will awaken. You will push the rubble aside, push open the magic door, demand to hear and talk with the force of who you are, get into relationship with your life force, and you will start building from that core. And then from the inside, everything else will start to heal. It takes time, but this is the process that I'm exploring and that I'm in and that I'm sharing. I'm not a master. I'm just going through it. I'm talking with a lot of people who are going through it, and this is what I'm learning.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And, you know, you said something about, you know, healing relationships, and, you know, you've been talking about, you know, people going through Lyme disease, or it could be really any chronic.
Any disease, the breakup of a relationship, a bankruptcy,
Yes.
anything.
Yes. So let's say that, let's look at the person that the person who has the disease is living with, their spouse, their brother, their sister, their mom, their dad, their child. You know, how not only can that person help the person going through this, but how do they take care of themselves and continue on their path, but having this other person that they love going through this? Do you know what I'm asking?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, there's a really great interview with a woman named Sabrina about this very thing. She was the wife of Matthew Hurtado, who is the founder of Allow Ministries, and he has healed himself from Lyme disease, but he really went through it, and I want to say for 12 years or more. And Sabrina and I had a chat, and that interview is posted on Patreon Network of Love. So if that's you, definitely go there and listen to that. From my experience of watching what it did to Kevin, you know, I was pretty checked out and non-functional for the better part of 3 years. So, and then in and out of the remission, you know, sort of skimming the edges of remission, I was up and down. The world wasn't seeing it. I refused to show them, but Kevin definitely saw it. And he was constantly propping me up, you know, not to mention the bank account. Wow, the constant cash flowing out. I'm just working so hard, you know. So I would say for the people who are in that position, for the Kevins of the world, for the Sabrinas of the world, this is also an invitation to the truth of who you are. Because ultimately, the only way you can actually help anyone, this is kind of a hard one, but this is the truth that I'm learning, is to stand in fierce relationship with yourself. The only way that you can have a true love relationship with anyone is to have union with the agape love, the force of love, the love that created you in love. Without that, you will both be drowning, and it will spin and cycle. That's through the, since yoga they call it the cycles of samskara, you know, wounding and projecting and depression and exhaustion and disconnection and just all the things that happen in our human experience. I would say the number one thing that you could do would be to develop a practice where you nourish yourself deeply. And I share nourish practices on the Network of Love as well. And help your partner or your friend or your family member develop that practice as well, separately from you. Mm-hmm. So it looks like finding that place or that space within your home or within your she shed or he shed, you know, but really understanding that if the foundation for our health, the health of our relationships, the health of everything in our lives is our relationship with love, then we have to have our sacred time to be in relationship with that divinity. And a lot of times people who are caretakers, and I'm also a caretaker, the oldest of 6 kids, you know, when my mom left, I became the mom. And in a lot of ways, like that whole survivor archetype that wanted to hide being sick, it was because I only feel worthy if I'm helping. You know, so I mean, that was another, you know, super trip, like have my ability to help and take care of myself taken away. Oh my God, talk about a pit of unworthiness. That's not true. Mm-hmm. But that's what we get into. You know, we get into these codependent sort of connections, and it's all driven by this desire to want to help. But if we were to understand that the way that you could help is to nourish a relationship with love and to support that other person in nourishing their own relationship with love and make that the number one priority, and then from there come together to make a plan together. You know, I see that you're going through this thing, and I'm your sacred witness. And I'm absolutely here to shine the light on the path for you. You know, and I absolutely believe in you. And I know for sure I see you radiantly healthy. I know that for sure you're going to make it. You know, so I mean, these are the ways that we can really help, because our minds do these really wild and crazy things. And what we need more than anything is people believing in us, people talking about how we're going to get there, you know, people helping us do what we can. I always like to say what we need most are hand ups, not handouts. You know, we need collaborative relationship. We need to be invited into creativity. You know, there's so much when you're going through something like this that you can't do. It feels like everything's been taken from you. But just like, this is such an incredibly enlivening, healing, medicinal, and inspiring experience being on this podcast with you, because you saw something that I can do, and you invited me into an experience and into a relationship. And it's like, oh my God, I can do that. I can sit on the couch with my heating pad and talk with you about love. That I can do. And the fact that that's valuable to you and valuable to the world makes me want to live.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Does that help? You see how it's so different?
Wonderful. It is wonderful. So how do you live a bodacious life with Lyme disease, or whatever the difficulty is that you're facing? What has given you the most joy and happiness in your life?
I can say that what gives me the most joy and happiness in my life is being around people being bodacious. So, I mean, honestly, like, it's what got me out of bed and wanting to live the first time, and it's never changed. So that experience that we had at New York at yoga, where we were all connected and we were feeling connected to each other and to ourselves, you know, seeing the light in your eyes when you came up to me after class and we hugged, and you know, we knew that we had touched God together. Like, that's what I live for. Like, that's the juice of life, you know, and it shows up in so many different ways. Right now it's showing up in you know, being with audiences after they've experienced the Portal film. It's that same sort of, like, you know, people, the light is there in their eyes, the door is open to the truth of who they are. They realize that there is a doorway to the truth of who they are. They realize it's okay to want to know themselves. They realize it's okay and actually invited to be themselves. And being witness to that, and somehow being involved in facilitating the space or the container or the inspiration for that is like everything. So,
that is exciting, and I can see it. Your whole face is light up. I know this is a podcast, but your whole face is just lit up.
Thank you.
That huge smile on your face. So thank you so much
You're so welcome.
for showing up over and over again. And for just being determined to share your light.
Thank you.
And I am so thankful that you're here.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, because that's how this works, right?
Yes.
It's call and response. We need the invitation. So everyone who has someone in their life who is needing some help, invite them to shine in a way that they can. Because there's something that no matter what it is that you're going through, there's going to be something you can still do. There's going to be some spark of the truth of who you are that exists. Like, for me, no matter how sick I am, how depressed I am, I can be overwhelmed with suicidal thoughts and in my process around the whole thing. And you know what happens for me is, all of a sudden I'll know, oh, so-and-so needs to connect with so-and-so, and I'll see a connection that needs to be made. And then I realize, okay, so that part of me, that part of my truth, no matter how sick I am, it's still there. And that's valuable to the world. We have, you know, it's the call and response of helping each other remember our value in the world and how that's going to shift and change over time. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for having a picture of us on your altar and holding me in the light, and you know, and for cherishing the experience that we had together, because of you, I'm reminded that there's a reason for me to be here. So thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. And I'll make sure and put the, you know, it's a website for Patreon.
Yes.
And also the website for the Portal, the film.
Yes.
so people can experience that. I'll make sure and put that in the show notes. And I just want to encourage listeners, if you are struggling with this, get into that community so you can all support each other. And just thank you for doing that and for putting that together for people. It's just such a gift.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would say in your darkest times, find that one spark that's true to who you are, and then put that into service in the world, and everything will begin to shift.
Amen.
Yeah.
So be it.
So be it.
All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for, this really long heart to heart. It feels super valuable, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good.